Valentino is based on real events. The story of Rudolph Valentino coming to the United States and being spotted in a tango palace in New York, and then being taken out to Hollywood and essentially conquering Hollywood. He was the biggest star of all time, and he had a magnetism that jumped off the screen. He was incredibly handsome, incredibly sexual, and he was sexual in a way that appealed both to men and women, which was interesting for the time and also controversial in a certain way. So essentially, The Dream of Valentino tells that story of Valentino being discovered by June Mathis, who was a script writer, a screenplay writer in Hollywood. She spotted him and took him out. He was signed up by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and essentially began this sort of building up of the legend of Rudolph Valentino, and then, which is sort of one of the perverse things about American society and the American entertainment society, is that it's time to tear them down after a certain time. And he was indeed torn apart by his desire to be both an artist, yet being sold really almost as a piece of meat for the public. And he went through a lot of controversies and finally died through a very bad illness that came upon him very quickly. And his death was a great moment in celebrity history as well. People were screaming and crying and throwing themselves onto his coffin. And so, you know, it's not a particularly, you know, sort of lighthearted look at Hollywood, although there are moments of great fun. There are beautiful tango music. Of course, Valentino was a great dancer and a great singer as well. And so it's a fascinating look at celebrity in the United States.
The commission for Valentino came from both the Washington Opera at Kennedy Center and Dallas. They were going to do a co-production. And I thought about a subject, and it occurred to me that I've always wanted to do something about Hollywood. It was a very nice American subject. And thinking about it, I thought about Valentino, and particularly his premature death and what brought it on. So I mentioned it to the intendant at that time, Martin Feinstein, at Washington. I started to write the libretto myself because by then I was writing my own. I had collaborated with Charles Nolte back in 1975 when he and I wrote The Voyage of Edgar Allan Poe for this company. And I was inspired at that time to ask Charles, who taught theater and playwriting, if he would be interested when the commission came in for the bicentennial. And I had seen a play of his called The Night of the Black Pig, which was about Strindberg, and it was exactly the kind of mood I wanted for my opera. And I asked him, and he wrote a wonderful libretto. It was hard work, and we sweated it out, but it was done. When it came to Valentino, I was thinking, I don't know that much about Hollywood. And Nolte had a career for a while in Hollywood and Broadway, and he knew all of the technical terms and what Hollywood was like. And so I finally gave up myself writing it. I had already sketched it out, but I asked him if he would take it on, and he loved the idea. Oh, Valentino, he was thrilled. And for me, one of the sad things about this production is that he just died a few years ago, and he would have loved to help me with the revision, because we both had, after seeing it, very clear ideas about some things that didn't work and some things that needed to work a little better. He was always a great opera fan. I don't know if you remember when the Metropolitan used to come to Minneapolis on tour. He always was one of the curtain pullers. He loved to be backstage near the singers. His collection of operas, I got to tell you, exceeds mine by many times. So he was really an opera buff, and he was a right person. And I think you'll see in the scenario of Valentino, there's a kind of insider knowledge of what's going on with these people.
It got great reviews, actually. It was, again, a star-studded premiere. Valentino designed the costumes for The Dream of Valentino. But it's a piece that Dominic, I know, wanted to take a look at again after its initial run. And we afforded him the opportunity to do that. So a couple of years ago, he started working on the piece again and began to edit things. Dominic understands pace really well, and he also understands dramatic through line of pieces. And so having the chance to really go back and look at it again, he really took a look at it from really focusing on the telling of the story rather than as a reflection backwards looking at it. So we start out in the tango hall right away at the top rather than at the funeral, which was in the original production. So I think it's a tight piece. It moves so quickly and really makes us get right into the soul of Valentino and his desire to be taken seriously as an artist. Eric Simonson has been sort of one of our great partners over the years. And he was also an integral part of New Works Initiative because he functioned really as a kind of someone who would help us determine what kinds of stories would be proper for the New Works. He and I sat down many hours just talking about stories and what kinds of stories could be translated into the opera form. And he is first of all, an Oscar-winning filmmaker. He has plays on Broadway, and he's really quite a phenomenon, and it's great to partner with him all these many years.
Rudolph Valentino, you could say, is the world's first movie star. I mean, of that caliber and of that stature. He came from Italy right after the First World War, landed in New York, and pretty quickly came to Hollywood and became a silent movie star. Nobody was prepared for the amount of attention that he would get, the effect that he would have on women and men all over the country and eventually all over the world. He became a star of the magnitude that the world had never seen before. At his death and after his death, he remained a star and a celebrity, became an icon, our first icon. You can put him up there with Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne, Elvis Presley, Marlon Brando. He's achieved that sort of stature in our constellation of stars. With The Dream of Valentino, I'm trying to tell the story as clearly as possible. It's a biographical piece. I love biographies. Every biography tells its own story, but you can't tell the story of someone's life just by telling the events in their life. You have to select and choose what events are the most important. So that's what the creators of this piece have done. And we have a point of view of Valentino. My job as director and my honor as a director is to tell the story that they're telling and really express what I feel they were trying to express. And certain themes come up about immortality, about our sort of current American mythology, who we choose to celebrate as a culture, what those icons that we create mean to us. I'm also in love with the idea of the backdrop of this piece, which is old Hollywood. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a mile away from Hollywood. I live in a place called Silver Lake where Max Sennett's studio used to be, Walt Disney's first studio was, all sorts of historical sites. And I'm a fan of that history of Los Angeles. The time that Valentino lived and he worked was an incredibly creative and inventive time for society in this country. There are a lot of people going out to Los Angeles to live, to escape, to create, and you had incredible personalities, really rich cultural landscape. A lot of people don't know that. And I'm excited to present that on stage, visually and aesthetically.
James Valenti, of course, is one of the great successes of the resident artist program. And when we decided to do Valentino, of course, we couldn't think of anybody other than him. He took a look at the score, and of course, the subject matter intrigued him, the whole idea of playing this incredible, multifaceted character. I'm excited to see James try something different. He's been really primarily an Italian lyric tenor, and it's really nice for him to try something new as well.
I read this book Dark Lover, and I'm reading another one now about his life and his secret life or not, and there are rumors about him being homosexual or not, and his different affairs, and I think he was a very tormented person. I think he was a very unhappy person, and he had all this success, and he was the first sort of Hollywood superstar, and he never really felt, I think, respected, and he never felt that he, like the opera's called, he never really got to live his dream. He was living, by all accounts, the dream life that anybody would want, but I think he felt, doing some of these things, the chic and some of these kind of sex symbol roles, that he was sort of cheapening his talent and his desire to be the next great, the Salvini, as he says in the opera, the next great sort of Italian lion of the Roman stage. And he was sort of pigeonholed into this sort of category, and he was very tormented by that. And at the time, he was a very controversial character because of he was this exotic tango dancer, wore these very amazing, elaborate clothes and custom suits, and most of the men, especially in this country at that time, in the 20s, that wasn't what a man was supposed to act like and be like. And he was scrutinized a lot for that.
We're hardwired to respond to stories and myth. We as human beings. I mean, it's gone back to the beginning of time when the Greeks created their mythological characters, their gods. And the stories that they told were a way of expressing themselves and also the fatal flaws of human nature. In America, we've been around for almost 250 years. It's a relatively new nation. About the time we started to create myths, like Daniel Boone and Johnny Appleseed, and Rudolph Valentino is a distant relative of those myths. Valentino was a real live person, but he also died very young, and we look at his life as a life lesson. What is it about him and his lifestyle that cut his life short? We look for answers. We try to find them. And in Valentino's case, it was kind of a trade-off. The amount of publicity and the amount of immortality that he got was a result of the fast life that he lived and the choices that he made in his life. The way that people sing this opera is a way, is very connected to the way that people converse. And the way that the music is dramatic is the way that life is dramatic. And I think it's one of the great stories of Americana that isn't told that often. And it's a great setting for an opera. The music just soars. There's some wonderful arias. There's some incredible orchestration pieces and segments in the tangos, very strong and masculine. And it's one of those operas that I actually, after I've worked on it, I go around humming the music as I go about my day. That doesn't happen a lot.